regardless of how it was distributed.
All right, welcome everyone. It's 6 p.m. on August 19th. This is the City Council work session for the city of Bel Air Beach, Florida. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Renee, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Frank Bankert.
Present.
Councilmember Lloyd Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Kim Elliott.
Present.
Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
City Manager Kyle Reefler.
Here.
And City Attorney Randy Mora.
Present. Thank you, Renee. Before we get started, I think what we're going to do is we're going to flip the agenda items around a little bit. We're going to take number 1, then number 3, then number 2, and then number 4. It just makes perfect sense if we're going to be discussing something concerning towers or anything like that. We should do it before we actually review the code, and just in case there's something that comes to light. Something else that I'd like to discuss quickly is it's kind of been weighing on me for a while. Everyone, please remember that it is not our responsibility to police the city. All right, we can complain just like everyone else does, but I don't want anyone to ever get in trouble for thinking that they have the ultimate authority over whatever it is. I know that there's various items that's come up over the past few years that have weighed heavy on our hearts, and we wish we could do something about it, but ultimately it falls back on the city staff and code enforcement and city attorney. Mr. Moore, if you've got anything you'd like to comment on, chime right in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just hearing your comments, my statement would just be to echo the sentiment that, in our schoolhouse rocks version of it all, you guys are the legislative branch, and most especially Kyle being the executive, and you guys provide direction in that respect on policy, and then the executive executes and enforces. And so that's where that authority sits, regardless of the issue. And I think that it's always helpful to be reminded of how those separation of powers interplay.
Thank you, Mr. Mora. All right, let's go right into agenda item number 1, which is insurance presentation. Mr. Reefler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So last year, I called upon Mr. Kyle Stokel to try and give us a proposal to be competitive with our current insurance provider, which is the Florida League of Cities. Last year, it was a higher year, and we weren't able to get a quote that was close. But this year, he came around and started working with me about in June in trying to provide competitive coverage for our current insurance policy. He has a proposal which I'd like him to present to the city council. And then just last week, which is the typical timeline for FLC, we got our quote for their insurance. I've included the policy changes, also included the email just kind of covering some of their perks that they have, and the 2 invoices. One, the quote this year, which has gone up again. So our current policy, which we paid the 4th quarter, the total premium for the year was $77,261. And we just got our quote for the upcoming fiscal year, which is 2025, and now we're up to a total premium of $85,489. So we continue to see an increase with that premium. Most significant last year's increase, which went from $53,726 up to the $77,261. So that was a very significant increase, which is primarily the property liability or property insurance, which was actually a 43% 0.81% increase. So this year, we're facing another 10.65% increase. And it looks, if you compare the two invoices, it's all on the general liability side. But I think it's important to note that we continue to see increases with our current provider, and I'd like to have Mr. Stoker present his proposal to the council.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for that intro. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Kyle Stokel with Brown & Brown Insurance. And as Kyle said, I've been working with him for about the past year and a half on getting a competitive insurance proposal over to the city. So what I put together today is just kind of an overview of who we are. This is not, second. Yeah. An overview of my firm, who we are, why we're here, and the proposal that we put in front of you. So just a quick overview. Brown & Brown, we are a full-service international brokerage firm established back in 1939 in Daytona Beach, Florida. Over the past 80 years, we've grown to over 500 offices worldwide. We have over 18,000 teammates, and we are now the largest insurance intermediary in Florida. So we have about 50 offices throughout the state and 3,500 teammates throughout the state. I work for a special retail division called Brown & Brown Public Sector. So we are 100% focused on Florida public entities. We sell, service, and manage property and casualty and employee benefits coverages for local governments. We currently have over 200 public entities, and we place about over 180 million in annual insurance premiums. What that does is that kind of gives us, as a broker, we're not a direct to insurance market. We are a broker, so we're an intermediary, and we can go out and get quotes from other markets. That gives us kind of the ability to offer what we call concierge level service. Our desired position is to be an extension of your staff, and we handle all things insurance related on your behalf and work with you to make sure that your city is protected. Just for reference, some of the local entities that I personally handle the insurance for: City of Treasure Island, City of Madeira Beach, Town of Indian Shores, and the Pinellas Suncoast Fire District. So just because we're located in Daytona doesn't mean we don't have a kind of a local presence here. I'm over here all the time. So the real reason why I'm here, this is our proposal, our all-in premium this year. And this is a quote from the Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust. So there's two big insurance pools in the state: FMIT, Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, and PGIT, the Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust. Both very sound pools that government entities get their insurance from. Coverages are very similar. Additional services are very similar. So one or the other, you're in good hands either way. But what we've proposed today is an all-in premium of $76,458. That's for your property, your liability, your auto lines, and your workers' comp. In addition to the insurance, there's a lot more that comes with the package. So for that same premium, you get all this in addition for no additional cost. So you get a dedicated loss control representative, which will be available to you to come on site, perform loss control endeavors. We'll do building inspections, that sort of thing. We have a full suite of online training resources. There is the Preferred Priority, which is our new turnkey disaster recovery program. There's also a safety grant of $5,000 available annually. And then you'll get a full-on property appraisal by a third party. And you get a dedicated service team, which is us, to work on your behalf to handle the insurance. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with those in the following slides, but wanted to focus on some of the coverages really quick. So our all-in premium, $76,000. We are, like Kyle said, we're about 10.5% under what your renewal is this year. One of the big things, though, is the coverage differences. So when you look on this slide here, on the right, and so my job as an insurance broker is to go through insurance policies, kind of tear them apart and figure out how I can make them better and look for exclusions and things that I can improve on. So when I went through your current policy, and that's what I based my insurance quote off of, I found this exclusion, and this is only part of it. I couldn't fit the whole thing on the slide, but basically this is a wind exclusion that is in your current package policy. So what you're looking at, where all those X's are in that little box on the side, that is in reference to a building number on your property schedule. So this exclusion is stating that this building does not have wind coverage. So what I did is I took your current schedule, put in Excel format, and matched it up with this this exclusion to show what that looks like how much of your property schedule is excluded for wind. And everything in red currently does not have wind coverage on it. Storm surge is also part of wind. So in the event that a hurricane comes, I'm not confident that your current policy would respond. So the proposal that I've put in front of you from Pidgeot, full wind coverage, no wind exclusions. There's no exclusion with relation to the coast, how far you are. So basically you have the full 5 million in total insured value for the city is available in a windstorm event. So just to kind of go on, and the rest of the coverage as well is pretty much apples to apples. We match the limits and most of the deductibles. So it would be a pretty easy switch. The coverages are relatively the same. To go on some of the additional resources. So I mentioned the preferred priority. That is their kind of comprehensive remediation program. So what we do is pre-storm preparation. Your loss control representative will meet with you, go over disaster preparedness guide, and then we'll do a property appraiser as well. So every 5 years you get a property appraisal that's done by a third-party company. And basically the idea is to have replacement cost values and up-to-date insurance values so that if an event were to occur, we've got enough insurance to replace this building to current standards. So that's all kind of pre-storm stuff. During the storm, we've got boots on the ground ready to go. And then they're also there for the claim closeout. So everything is done in documentation that supports your FEMA assistance. So that's kind of there's 3 parties involved for a natural disaster or really any property lost. So the preferred priority program consists of PGCS, which is the claim administrator for the trust, Engel Martin, which is the third-party adjuster. They're your boots on the ground doing the adjusting for the claim. And then Blue Sky, that's an option that you can use. They're a disaster remediation company. They've got global resources, and what they do is they basically place themselves outside of the cone of the storm. As soon as the wind stops blowing, they're here, they're available. They've got dehumidifiers, generators, any sort of resource that you would need. They're here to help respond. And they've basically been vetted by the insurance program already, and they will pay them directly on your behalf outside of the deductible. So it's a very streamlined process, and the goal is to basically get the city back up and running and whole again, and to get you to a point where FEMA can be closed out and you're back on your way. In terms of loss control, so these are some additional resources that are available, again, at no cost. Like I said, a dedicated loss control rep. There's also cybersecurity resources. There's an HR helpline, gives you employment law expert, unlimited use. There's ADA website compliance. Vector Solutions is an online training program that you have access to. And then you have our preferred tips program. So this is that $5,000 matching grant. So every policy period, this is available to you. It can be used for anything that is safety or loss control related. If you have to install ADA compliant railways or PPE for employees, anything that really can mitigate a claim, this can go towards. So it's a matching grant. If you spend a total of 10,000, you can get 5,000 back. So they really kind of take a focus on pre-loss, loss control, and making sure that, we're managing risk for the city. That's all I have for now. Any questions?
Council? Yes, Mr. Banker.
I think we ought to lock the door and not let you out of here till we sign the policy.
I appreciate that.
Good job, Kyle.
Thank you.
If you could tell us a little bit about how these additional services work and at what cost?
So in terms of a loss, say a hurricane loss, there's going to be no additional cost to use these services. They're going to use Xactimate when it comes to rating your loss, and that all gets done by the adjusters, and that gets sent to the claims administrator, and they determine the value of your loss. But there's no separate fee for using them.
So who pays for them?
That's part of your insurance claim.
So do they get a portion of a recovery or?
So these are the people actually doing the work. So if the windows blow out in this building, you have to get that fixed. There's a bill associated with that. They're the people that come in and fix that. So they're just pre-contracted vendors
Gotcha.
to do the work. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
I have a question for Kyle. So Kyle, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to compare this. So it's apples to apples as far as coverage.
Yes, we had a meeting, we went over coverage by coverage. There's some areas I think you had a little bit more coverage, but in no areas were they less or were the deductibles more. I'd like to just kind of see it laid out again one more time for comparison.
Sure.
Outside of that, the programs, they're very comparable to FLC programs. The one thing I noted though was that preferred chips, it's similar to the FLC safety grant program, but currently we only get matching grant of 1,500. So if we spend 1,500, we get 1,500 back per they separate in the two divisions. So if you compare it to this, it's only 3,000 versus 5,000. So we have an opportunity to get more money back with their program. Well, like I said, everything, I didn't see anything that was significantly different as far as, but very comparable to FLC.
Okay, great. Did you have a chance to talk with some of the local towns down the road here? Like Treasure Island, Madeira Beach?
I would like to, I have not. I've talked to Indian Shores, the previous administrator, and they were satisfied. That was last year.
Okay,
But I'd like to follow up with some reference calls.
all right, good.
What's the effective date of the new policy?
It would be with the fiscal year, so October 1.
So does that mean until October 1, we have no coverage for this building?
No, we're covered until September 30th.
Forgive me, I thought part of,
The wind, so Kyle, I think you have a separate
Oh,
wind
the wind.
policy.
We do
Yes.
have a separate wind policy for this building.
oh, we do.
Yes.
So how much is the premium for that?
I want to say 3,500 roughly. I'd have to check my numbers.
Okay, so it's not significant, but that's an additional cost
That-
differential.
Yes. I don't know if that was bought as supplemental insurance at one point and our wind coverage dropped off. I wasn't aware. I knew we had wind insurance on the building through the separate policy, but I wasn't aware that we did not have coverage on all those assets throughout the city.
It's almost a $13,000 reduction. I would like to know how FMIT, what they would have to say about that, because it's, that's a dramatic difference, considering what, the way everyone's policies are going up. I'm really surprised, that not questioning you at all, but, they're either, I mean, they're not supposed to be a for-profit organization, right?
No, both companies are operate I think they're actually filed as public entities themselves.
You think it's the number of communities they have and the number of claims that they have that's made their rates become higher than yours are?
Yeah, so last year was tough. I mean, nobody was immune from the rate increases last year with what the property market did in Florida. They just had to push rate where they had to. We didn't push rate so we definitely push rate from the Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust, but not to some of the extremes that we saw out there with other carriers.
Okay. And you said you had roughly, was it 70 communities that you're covering currently?
Yeah, so we have 200 public entities or local governments, and that's comprised of cities, towns, villages, about 70 municipalities. We have 22 counties, a handful of school boards, and a lot of special districts.
Okay.
Now, the trust itself, so that's me as a broker. The trust itself, Preferred, I think they have roughly 400 members, over 400.
Okay.
FMIT is larger than us. They've been around since 70s or 80s. Preferred's been around since 2000, 2001. But yeah, so they've got a little bit less than what FMIT has now in terms of total membership.
All right. I am not opposed to switching, provided that our neighbors that are also on the same. It's something that we'd like to discuss further. And then obviously we'd have to take it to a vote, but how does everyone else feel?
I have a few more questions if I may.
Sure.
One is, what is the rating for Preferred?
The rating,
Yeah,
so they're not rated because they're a public trust, but they are backed by excess insurance, the same way FMIT is. They're backed by excess carriers, and all of the excess carriers are rated A minus or better. I don't have that with me, but we do have access to that to provide.
and you said that's the same as our current carrier?
They operate in the same manner, correct? They're not rated by AM Best, but they're backed by excess insurance.
Is this a claims made or occurrence policy?
This would be occurrence. Everything but well, the property's on occurrence, so that limit reloads every storm. And then our public officials and our general liability are on occurrence form as well. So it'd be a smooth transition.
And what do we have currently?
Should be occurrence form.
Do you know that?
I don't, I'd have to look at the policy.
The reason why I'm asking is I'm trying to decide if we need any kind of tail coverage.
Mhm.
Okay,
We've done this transition multiple times from FMIT to Pidget, and the way that we quoted it on occurrence form, you wouldn't need a tail.
all right. Another issue is that cybersecurity is obviously a growing risk
Sure.
and a big one. So you indicated that some extra services are available for that.
So yes, the insurance is backed by AXA XL. They're one of the premier cyber insurance providers. That's our excess carrier. We actually provide a $2 million limit within our program. I think you only have $1 million right now. So there is a little bit more coverage. And then the resources that you're allowed through AXA XL, there's tabletop exercises, there's pre-claim stuff that you can do. And then there's also a full response panel, breach response. They are top notch.
Do
So
you offer training for like
Absolutely.
staff?
Yep.
I would recommend that, Kyle. It's something you want to look at.
There is a requirement this year for cybersecurity training that we have to fulfill. That was I think, one of the statutes.
Good, good, good. With regard to our current coverage, how much of that increase might be related to attorney's fees?
Well, like I said, if you look at the quotes from last year to this year, most of them, they went up in general liability insurance coverage. I don't know how that's directly related. They didn't break it down any further. But if
Yeah.
you compare it to last year, where we saw it all across the board, property increases. So, from what I understand, our workers' comp actually went up slightly, our premium, but our track record for the past 5 years, we should be on a negative. So I don't know why they're continuing to increase us.
Okay. I thought that the Florida League of Cities was more than an insurance company. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
So are there services from it that we would not be receiving if we change carriers?
No, I believe that's not the case. FMIT
It's a separate entity.
is completely separate.
So there's distinct entities, but it's kind of like two sides of the house, just like you have, if you're Verizon, right? There's Verizon Wireless and Verizon Landline. FMIT is its own entity. That is the insurance pool. The Florida League of Cities as an association of cities for lobbying, educational purposes it's distinct. They sort of exist within an umbrella, but they're distinct. And so in things like the Florida League of Cities annual conference, the educational materials, their continuing education, member services and training, that's distinct from the policy.
All right, very good.
We would not be penalized if we drop this insurance in any of those other areas. I think that's.
I see no reason why. There's plenty of cities and elected officials who participate who are from Pidget
Sure.
or Geico or other city, who are insured in other ways.
Okay.
Obviously, from the Florida League of Cities perspective, they always love to get everybody on both sides.
Yeah.
But that's their thing. For your purposes, you are free to associate and contract as you see fit for your community.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, no? No? Yes, sir.
So logistically, Kyle, how would it work for you with regards to timing, anything we needed to vote on so that you could make the transition?
I'd like to follow up with some of the questions we talked about and then bring it to the September meeting.
Okay.
And what's the timetable for making a transition usually?
we just need signed paperwork before 10/1.
Okay.
We're good to go.
Okay.
There's not a drop date on whenever our insurance expires versus whenever it picks. I mean, he's saying anytime, but that's not really the case. It would, we hem-hawed around about it till late December.
Well, yeah, you can't take that. So anytime ahead of 10-1, so your current coverage expires 9:30 at midnight, ours would pick up 10-1 at 12:01 a.m. Yeah, so as long as we have a bind order before 9:30, we'd be good to go.
Okay, so it would possibly be the next meeting or a special meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
I would plan on September's meeting, but we do actually have the second budget night, so we can do it then too.
Right, okay, September.
all right. It'd be nice to hear your findings in advance before we
Yes.
actually took. the
Okay.
vote. Any other questions for Kyle? This Kyle, not that Kyle. No?
Does it include flood insurance?
No, that is separate. It's always been separate. So we have a policy through National Flood Insurance Program for this building, the house next door and the detached garage. So 3 separate
Now,
policies.
it would provide excess flood insurance, so anything
really?
above NFIP, there would be coverage in there for. I think there's a $4 million limit built in. So anything that's not in a flood zone, which I think everything is, but that would be subject to standard flood. Anything in NFIP, we're going to set excess of, so we'd pay in addition to whatever the loss is above NFIP.
Very good.
All right.
Beautiful.
Great.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Stokes.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you coming here tonight.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the enlightening presentation. All right, now we are on to item 3, which is it was placed on the agenda by Councilmember Bankard. This is discussion of permit BLD 23-00108 issued for 105 8th Street. Mr. Bankard, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm gonna try to put this in the best order I can. But earlier this year, when that permit was issued, a number of residents contacted me. And I fully explained that council was told by the city attorney, Big Brother was the reason for this permit, not the city or the county. And noted who Big Brother was the federal government. This position did not go well with the residents for a few reasons, as they actually pointed out code violations found in our Bel Beach ordinances. Their argument was we should have serviced this permit ourselves and took the appropriate steps with our code. Originally, a board adjustment hearing was set for this matter, which would have reviewed the code, granted a variance, or denied the permit requests with explanations of denial, etc. on this matter. To my knowledge, along with the residents, that this was canceled. Any denial from the Board of Adjustments has an appeal process, which would have been upheld by the court or sent back to the city for modifications or approval. Our code 94-291 under definitions. The name of, or this definition of this device at 105 8th Street has been questioned from antenna by some and tower by others. So as our forefathers wrote this code, they define what a tower is. Tower means any structure that is designed and constructed primarily for the purpose of supporting one or more antennas. 105 has an antenna on top of the tower. There should be no question this is a tower. Section 94-9292 purpose. The goal of this article is to encourage the location of towers in non-residential areas. 105 8th Street is a residential area. Code 94-294 antennas. So noted, our code allows antennas with specific existing buildings, light poles, or supporting existing structures. 105 had an antenna for years. I've been here 10 years. I remember they had a fabric antenna on the house years ago. The owner then took that down, relocated, rented his home. He then moved back. And now we have this antenna on a tower. Although under code 294, it further notes antennas and related equipment as visually obtrusive as possible. This tower sticks out like a sore thumb, noticeable from 8th Street and back at 9th Street, along with the side yards. Any potential buyer, and I want to emphasize this, or nearby this home would surely notice this tower, which could affect pricing of potential homes nearby it. This section further notes the goal of this article is to encourage the location of towers in non-residential areas and to minimize the total number of towers. C, section 94-249 294 antennas notes none should be more than 6 feet in height of the existing structure. The antenna in question far exceeds, but more importantly, not on the existing structure. Code 94-295 towers in our city must have an institutional zoning classification. For the record, an institutional zone means use within the lines of or on property necessary for the operation of buildings such as hospitals, schools, libraries, auditoriums, and office complex. 105 does not fall into this category. Under 94-294, survey bond was to be posted on this site, on this bond, or on this permit. I don't know if ever one was posted. 94-296, tower shall be set back from the existing residential or commercial use. A distance equal to 1.3 times the height of the tower. So this tower should be 52 feet from the existing structures. The engineer plans submitted shows 7 foot 8 inches. 94-297 notes towers must conform with building codes and Electronic Industries Association. Now, this needs to be changed tonight. Or the EI, it's classified in our code. This organization was dissolved on or about 2007, and Florida replaced these industry standards with the Telecommunication Industry Association, now known as the TIA. So I contacted the TIA. David Harkins, who is currently the vice chair of the TIA committee, which is responsible for producing ANSI TIA-222-1 standards, which governs the design and analysis of communication towers. He also has a structural engineering firm that provides structural analyst services to the communication tower industry. I asked him about the tower and the manufacturer rating at 70 miles per hour to be beefed up to 135 miles per hour. Mr. Harkin noted that ANSI TIA-222-1 standard is appropriate standard for evaluating the tower. The ASCE-7 standard determines the minimum required design wind speed for different regions of the country. Mr. Hawkins pointed out to install the reference tower that has the manufacturer rating at 70 miles per hour at a location that requires 135 miles per hour. And just to note, that's what the county requires this one to be. When load capacity, then you would have the option for the manufacturer to provide you with a professional engineering CO analyst showing how the tower would need to be modified to meet the 135 mile per hour requirement. If the manufacturer is not able to provide that service, then I recommend you engage a structural engineering firm with the tower expertise to perform the analysis and modifications plans for you. Further says, if you have an independent engineer provide you with a PECO code compliant modification to the tower to meet the required wind speed, then the manufacturer should not necessarily have to agree to the modifications. But he notes, however, modifications done to the tower without the manufacturer agreement may likely void any warranty you have with the tower. I suggest you have a conversation with the manufacturer to fully understand your options and restrictions. One of the many reasons I contacted the TIA was because of the retailer distributor email I received when I posed as a potential buyer of the tower in my community that requires 135 mile an hour rating. While I received a voicemail from Joe Gunn, the tower distributor, I asked if I could get something in writing. And I emphasized that I needed it to be approved to 135 mile an hour wind gust. So he went back to the manufacturer and he sent me an email on August 1st, 2024 at 9:45 a.m. Good morning, Frank. Yes, sir. Illumina does not have a tower option that is rated for 135 mile an hour wind rating, gust or sustain. There is a possible option of having the tower attached to a building. This would use a building bracket so the tower would be attached to the building and a concrete slab at the base. You would need to have a third-party company come out to the property and do an analysis to see if this could pass the 135 mile an hour wind rate. I have been told that this option usually costs around $2,500. I can get you the info on how to proceed with this if you like. However, there is no guarantee that the analyst will come back showing that the tower can be rated at 135 mile an hour winds. Let me know if you have any questions. Gage Joe Gunn Antenna Company. Returning to our codes, 94-300 maintenance and inspection notes if a tower or an antenna is subject to class 1 to 5 hurricane as defined by the U.S. Weather Service or a major tropical storm with winds excessive 75 miles an hour, each tower so affected shall be inspected for the structural damage reported shall be filed within the city. We just experienced 2 weeks ago Hurricane Debby. When that passed us, it was rated at a category 1 with wind gusts of over 80 miles an hour. I don't know if there was an inspection done on this tower. After a meeting with the concerned residents on this matter and then providing me with these code infractions, I reached out to Senator Scott and Senator Rubio's office. Both gave me a liaison that works with dealing with the FCC. They both asked me for our codes along with any memorandums we received. They then took both of this to the senators, general counsels, and arranged a meeting with the FCC on this matter. July 9th, 2024, FCC meeting. Those attending were Rebecca Brown, FCC counsel, Jack Hinkins, Senator Scott's general counsel, Clayton Stein, Senator Scott's office, and Peyton Ross, Senator Rubio's legislative assistant. FCC put on the record that they are an administration agency, not a state, county, town enforcement agency. They further noted the information sent to the senator's office were reviewed by them and noted the following. The courts have the final say on the situation at hand if a town or city refuses to allow a ham radio antenna tower in a particular municipality. It was further noted that counsel of FCC would not give legal advice on Delaware Beach codes or ordinances which I have submitted. They further noted FCC would not give guidance to allow or not allow a tower. That ability falls back again to the state municipalities. Although they did indicate simple past court challenges that benefited one or the other parties or noted both or can be found in the courts. And they emphasize this. They said, does the tower cause a possible unsafe situation? Can it cause harm if fallen or collapsed to a nearby neighbor? As noted, if the tower is erected on a property but falls or collapses or not nearing any structure and still on the owner's property, then this could be considered safe. I noted BB's situation was less than 10 feet from each other's residence where the tower was. FCC would not give a position on that. Then the other thing they noted was, does the structure reduce property value? Which I put in there about our code. And this is what they're saying. The property value is adjacent to the property or near the property that has the tower. Since this tower impacts nearby residents as in the above, I would say yes. Again, FCC would not comment, but noted the situation. If safety is not the matter, they emphasize, and just a denial from the municipality of its code, not allowing for aesthetics or other matters, were reasonable accommodations given to the applicant for a permit to erect the structures. Examples they gave. Agreeing the tower to be lowered when not in use. Tower not to be erected overnight or certain hours. Tower to be conformed with all safety structures when erected, guide wires or a choke that are on this tower right now. When storms are forecasted, the tower not to be put in use. These given examples, which courts found to be reasonable to accommodate, simply if accommodations were agreed, then the applicant of the permit would need to comply. FCC noted sometimes these reasonable accommodations to proceed are met with strong pushback from the applicant and end up in court. It was noted when a city or town tries to work it out, the courts very seldom go with the applicant's free usage position. This meeting, while all were very critical, noted Big Brother was not the culprit for reason this was approved. The lack of enforcing our codes and possibly going to the court if 105 challenged the permit denial, or more importantly, the items noted as reasonable. To conclude, while the FCC was calling from Washington, it was further noted that the courts in our area most probably would be the best to understand the elements of our area and make the correct decision. In the permit application, it says, in the owner's affidavit, it so notes on number 9. I agree that as the party legally and financially responsible for this proposed construction activity, I will abide by all applicable laws and requirements of the government, owners, builders, as well as employers. I understand that this construction must comply with all applicable laws, ordinances, building codes, and zoning regulations. That's in his affidavit signed by him, the applicant. Even with the county issuing a permit conforming with WIN, the owner has sworn to comply with number 9 of the owner's affidavit. Therefore, this should have then gone back to the Board of Adjustments for a hearing to conform to all ordinances and zoning before a permit was issued. Florida Building Code 31, Section 3108, telecommunication and broadcast towers. Towers shall be located in the 3108-2 location access. Towers shall be located such that guide wires and other accessories shall not cross or encroach upon any streets or other public space or over or above ground electric utility lines or encroach any private property surrounding the tower. If you look at the tower, they have guide wires hanging off of it, tied to a plastic fence that are on the neighbor's property. Should this permit be revoked? Under Florida Building Statute 53.79, the enforcing agency is empowered to revoke any such permit upon a determination by the agency that the construction, erection, alteration, modification, repair, or demolition of the building for which the permit was issued is in violation of or not in conformity with the provisions of the Florida Building Code. Today, August 19th, I spoke with Tony Ruffini today, the engineer that submitted his seal for the tower. I noticed speaking with the retailer, Joe Gunn of the tower, that the manufacturer would agree if guide wires were installed properly, it would be rated up to 90 miles per hour. Mr. Ruffini, and please listen to this one. Mr. Ruffini asked, doesn't this tower fold up and able to be laid down? I said, yes. He said that the last time he spoke to the manufacturer, all that was needed was to write a note that it would be taken down in the event of a windstorm. Mr. Ruffini noted, but would not put in the note, it would be taken down by order. Mr. Freeman said simply, who would enforce this? Simply the idea that you would lower it should get this passed. I then asked about the 135-mile rating, and can I get it certified for that? He said he could do some structural analyst on this and come up with a rating for that, for about that wind speed. I then asked, would that conform with TIA standards? He asked what that was. I know that Florida recognizes Telecommunication Industry Association and its needs to meet ANSI TIA-222-1. He noted he was not aware of that standard. I further noted this would be a concrete base. He noted that would need a separate engineering approval. I said that standard was a main concern for me when I was reading the code of the TIA-222. He then said that only the manufacturer has the data to make the changes to the structure. Mr. Williams says, I don't want to go to that avenue. I said, one of my main concerns is who is liable if an accident or worse, someone gets hurt from this. Since you will be certifying it, are you liable? Mr. Ruffini was clear. He is never liable. I said, what if it comes down and comes apart? We get winds of more than 100 miles an hour. Mr. Ruffini said, again, he is not liable. He said, I am sure it would not fly apart, probably just bend. Mr. Ruffini believes that my homeowner's insurance would be liable. I asked, would I have to get a rider on this? He said, I am not telling you to do that. He noted that you would have to look up your insurance policy that would note that this is allowed or prohibits this, but most of them are probably silent on this. So I asked about the cost, and after I get this set up, about having him come out to inspect it and certify it. He noted that in Florida, he doesn't need to go out and do a physical inspection, and his office is pretty far from you. Florida simply accepts pictures. He said, submit a letter that you will take down the tower during a windstorm, and if you have issues, let me know. The call lasted 24.5 minutes. He was calling me back from his Colorado office. I do want to note that RES Engineering specializes in the following engineering per the website: foundation and framing design and repair, permit packages, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, grading and retaining walls, building designs, drafting services, nothing about towers. So he's not complying with the TIA requirements that he's an expert or an engineer in these towers. So simply, this tower was erected, permitted, and I went to the county about this. They don't want to talk to me when I was producing evidence. And this thing should be pulled. This thing was a joke. This thing was not by Big Brother. It was not handled by our codes. Our codes are specific. We're going to go through the codes tonight. If somebody yells at us or threatens to sue us, if we're not going to enforce our codes, why even have?
All right, I appreciate you gathering all that information and reading it verbatim to us. Now, what I would ask is, may we all have a copy so that we can digest this and then bring this back to the next work session next.
Give you it.
I think that that's only fair enough. This is way too much information for us to digest instantly.
I agree.
Mr. Mora, do you have any comments on this before we table this particular topic?
I'd like to thank the council member for his diligence and engagement in this issue. Last year in March, I provided a memorandum sort of setting forth the legal framework. I think that is still consistent with where we're at. I'd like the opportunity, just as the council members wish some time to digest. I'd like to make sure I'm always willing to take new information or information that I've seen in the past and reevaluate my position and see if there's meaningful reason to change that. And so without saying more, that's where I stand now. The council members clearly put a great deal of time into researching this issue, and I want to make sure that his efforts are met with an equally diligent response rather than off the top of my head. Here's what I'm thinking, feeling, initial impressions.
Fair enough. My thoughts exactly. Would anyone else like to comment before we move on? Again, thank you, Mr. Bankard. Thank you. All right, now we are on to item number 2. This is discussion and review of recommended code changes. Mr. Riefler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're gonna start with chapter 10, and this is in our current code format, with strike through and underline, recommendations. We're gonna move through chapter 10 in order up to chapter 94. The idea is to talk about, what the changes are, what the reason behind these proposed changes, and see if the council's comfortable with what we're recommending, or if there's some kind of tweak or maybe something that we're not thinking of that needs to be addressed. So I'm gonna have Louis Serna walk us through the code chapters, and then I will chime in with some of the reasons why I touched on, or I asked them to review and come up with recommendations as we move through.
Sir, for the record, can you say your name one more time?
Oh, yes. It's Luis Serna with Calvin Giordano and Associates.
And can you spell your last name, please?
Serna.
N-A. All right. Thank you, sir.
And everybody calls me Louis, but
Hmm.
let's see, I was gonna. Pardon me, I'm gonna share my screen. On the right screen. Word version. Let's see.
You just go to your screen itself, then you can open whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. There we go, finally. Yeah, so we've got a lot of changes. We'll walk through some of these. Most of the changes are in chapter 94. You'll see some highlights and different colors, and I'll try to explain what some of those are as we go through. First change, we'll start with chapter 10. First change is 10.10-3 coastal construction control line. That's stricken, and we tried to put some notes in there that when we've stricken it, but it's not being deleted, it's just being moved to chapter 94. And we can go over that when we get to 94.
We missed one change on page 1.
Oh, did we?
Yep, the time for construction.
Yeah, that's important.
So this is changing, currently we're at 7 AM to 6 PM, Monday through Saturday are days besides holidays for construction work. It's been recommended to me by several residents to consider moving it to 8 AM start as opposed to 7 AM. It's been brought up that landscaping companies on different streets tend to not start till 8 anyways, because they're used to those policies elsewhere.
Can I make a recommendation? Every time we discuss a new change, whatever the change is, just raise your hand if you don't like something. If everybody agrees with the change that's inserted, then we'll just review it and nod our heads and keep moving. Are we good with that?
Yeah, that 8 o'clock change, like landscaping. Pile driving, now it's music to my ears, but when they were driving pile around here, I mean, they were hitting that monkey at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:55, you could hear it coming down, so.
So is that a head nod?
Well, I liked it, but I was up.
I got you.
But a lot of people complain about it.
Got you.
Did I read somewhere else about if the homeowner was mowing their grass, it would be 7?
Yeah, that's further on down
Right.
in section 10. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was Monday through, or Sunday through Saturday with every day.
Aren't they excluded the homeowner, like when you're talking about mowing? Because you're not supposed to have the landscaper after what, 6?
It falls under noise then.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
Okay, right.
separate section.
Okay,
you were.
that's right. We get to it.
But yeah, I did miss that 8 o'clock there in section 10-2. And then 10-3, the coastal construction control line, that's just being moved.
Yeah, 3 months is better.
Scrolling down, this is where we get to time limits of permits. This is with discussion on Kyle based on their experience. There was a standard 18-month time limit on a permit. Based on our research, that's a long time. That's longer than most communities allow for permits. So we broke it up by remodels and value, pools, other permits and value. I don't know if you have any questions on that.
I thought this was a very good change. My question is it realistic in the sense that it seems like everybody's construction project runs long? And is that a matter of people just having to do better contracting, or,
Called Florida.
what happens to people in the meantime?
I find the one issue is with the new home builds. Those are the ones that can get delayed, whether it's materials, just getting, different specialists to come in and finish the trades. When it comes to small things like remodels, bathrooms, I think this is completely reasonable for what I see turned around, especially pools. Just note that there is some room for extensions that we built in. So in different situations, if there's a reasonable cause to why the project's not complete, it's similar to the new home builds. It gives me some power to extend the permit if it's valid before having to get to a hearing.
Is that subject to an additional fee or just,
It is not, it just has to be a written request.
all right,
So currently, right now, we have 18 months. When a house comes up on that, I notify them through a letter. You're coming up on 18 months. Do you need an extension? You need to notify me in writing. With a large project, we grant them the extension, but after that, they're at 2 years, and then it's the process, the code enforcement process, where we have to take them to a hearing and get a calendar, timeline set for completion.
And the section on the screen is this is where the extensions are discussed. And again, it's based on value and type of permit. All right, 10-36, we added sentence there to paragraph D. About dumpsters, limitations on those. Apparently that's been a problem as well.
Good with that?
Okay.
All right. Okay, the next 10-40, that was a recommendation for deletion by Florida Department of Emergency Management. So for consistency with the state model ordinance on dealing with flood regulations. And same with section 10-41. And same with 10-42. Pardon me, I'm just scrolling down. Looks like the next change deals with
1074.
10-74, yes.
Item 12.
And yeah, we just added what qualifies as a appropriate garbage disposal container, what doesn't, and what doesn't qualify. So a bag or a cardboard box would not comply as an adequate container for rubbish.
That could be a problem because a lot of these people do lawn work and all like that. They put it in these big black bags. So I understand this is supposed to be rubbish and garbage, but how do we know unless we rip the bag open what it comes out?
I can tell you, they place it the night before and it's ripped all to shreds.
Yeah, well, that would be a good, that would be a good.
There's a good indicator right there that they use they put food in a plastic bag. I admit that occasionally I have overflow, so
Yeah,
I
that's
put them in plastic bags, but I put them out right before the service comes.
Guess that's a better analogy to put.
Yeah. Anyone else on this one? Okay,
I do the same.
please continue.
Yes. All right, 10-77, this deals with parking material, off-street parking spaces. It allows the use of permeable materials. Loose surfaces such as gravel, crushed shall require some method of containment. So this just allows you a little bit of flexibility on what qualifies as appropriate parking material.
That's good.
I thought this was a very good change. And it's more consistent with encouraging permeable material.
This is for parking, correct?
Correct.
Driveway.
So I'm not opposed to this at all. However, I think that there should be a provision in there that it's your responsibility to contain that material because crushed shell, gravel, things like that are going to get caught in the tread of the tires, and eventually you're going to have debris in front of your house in the street. And so who's responsible for cleaning it up? Probably just not a bad idea to consider that. I don't know if that.
The language does say loose surfaces such as gravel or crushed shell shall require some method of containment such as a 4-inch thick and 4-inch wide border material.
Well, it would be contained until it's in the tread of the tires. And
Oh, I see what you're
it's
saying.
leaving. We have a street sweep service every so often, but yeah, just something to consider. I know that my car collects everything, so. Yes.
Was this language taken from,
From the city of Dunedin.
okay, so that's what before this. I think it is a great thing overall. Clearly, the GeoWeb and the turf block, that's self-containing in itself if you put shells and gravel over that. But so I think it is a good thing that we included some type of a perimeter, that if they just have gravel and or shell, that's going to somewhat contain it a little bit. I know one time I had a citizen, this was before this language was put in, so I think she's probably very happy now because she had a gravel and or shell driveway. And I think she was fined or threatened to be fined before this was in there because our code didn't support that.
Mhm.
So this is good.
Yeah, and it prevents, expanses of shell material or gravel and kind of creating, who knows where you're parking in the
Right.
front, so it kind of defines the areas.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
I'm good.
Just want to make a note, there's a couple of our residents are here just specifically on this issue, if you just want to give them an opportunity.
Would you like to speak, sir, on this topic?
Sound like there's much objection, but you did. Right.
You know what? Use your outside voice.
Appreciate the, so I'm at Bar Ball, corner of their page store. Quite extensive. Ability to work together with the city. And not have.
Despite what you may have heard, we are actually pretty reasonable. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, I think the next change is in chapter 22. Let me scroll through.
They moved the swimming pools from chapter 10 to chapter 94. That was on,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's chapter 10. Yeah, that gets moved. Chapter 94. That was the end of the chapter.
2233.
Yes, let's see.
Almost there.
yeah, 35, if you're looking at the
Yeah,
blue
right
numbers.
Yeah, basketball hoops, adding those as an exemption. They are allowed as long as they're maintained in good repair. They're exempt from being in the front yard. I think we're going to add some language in there that they shall not be in the right of way also.
Should there be something about maybe they need to be taken down in a storm event? Or if not, then maybe they need to have some sort of wind, something or another, anchored properly. I don't really know. But the last thing you'd want is one of those things flying down the street and crashing into someone's car or their front window.
No.
Also, is there a distinction between the portable basketball hoops versus permanently fixed ones?
Children toys is so vague. Like you're saying about the trampolines,
Well, that's true.
yeah. Is that,
Well, it's stating they can't be out in the yard for more than 24 hours. The only thing that I'm seeing right now that is allowed, according to this, is basketball hoops.
so if you have one of them jumping, you know what I'm talking about, them trampolines? They have to be taken in every night or?
I don't know.
I didn't see him that good part.
I haven't, I'm not sure. Not sure about that.
I would say yes.
These
currently.
days, with our insurance, they've got a lot of money if they have a trampoline.
Mm.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to notify.
Yeah.
That's a big,
Yeah.
big no-no if you don't.
I think it would probably fall under that category as a toy. I don't know.
I would say that once this comes to you in the form of of an ordinance as we're work sessioning, and I appreciate the note, and I think that the member Bankard's commentary concerning vagueness is well placed, and we can look to improving that language, perhaps to include, you know, toys and recreational devices such as, but not limited to, and that sort of thing, to give some clarity to that as we draft. So I think that's a note well taken so that we avoid some kind of vagueness challenge later.
Good. Yes.
Back to the basketball hoops, however, it looks as though the lead-in language relates to other portable items that aren't part of the natural landscaping. So by this exception, it seems that we're accepting the portable basketball hoops.
Yeah.
I don't know that I like those sitting around. They tend to deteriorate quickly. They look bad quickly.
You don't like the 5 cinder blocks on top of them?
That too.
I can tell you another community on the mainland recently went through extensive hearings on language amending their land development code related to portable or otherwise basketball hoops, and we can look to some of how that discourse went to inform what, you know, a draft presented to you in final form can look like
All right,
in the city of Seminole.
thank you.
My only comment was gonna be, you might be able to define it as a weight scenario. I mean, most of them have, the ones I'm envisioning, the ones that I've had for my daughters. The bottom portion of it, you could fill with water, sand combination, and it was extremely heavy. So, maybe we can put, I don't know what type of language the other cities put in there, but if it's very, very heavy, highly unlikely the wind's gonna pick that up. Something to think about.
Thank you. All right. Next, 2038.
Yes,
It's good.
this deals with noise. First part of that is just removing the specific fee amount and just adding that it will be addressed by resolution. We did that in a lot of other sections. Did I miss that? Now we're getting the noise. All right, based on the discussions we had at the previous work sessions, we deleted the part about yelling, shouting, et cetera. I think there was some concern about that language. In its place, we did, Kyle and I discussed boat and vehicle noises. Well, actually, no, this was a little different than what we discussed, but this just adds boat and vehicle noise, use of any boat or vehicle without a muffler or the operation of which causes a loud and raucous noise. And then we added further below about boat motors out of the water. So if you're operating your boat in your driveway, flushing it out, there's time limits when you can do that. That's paragraph 12. And then we changed B to eight AM. To be consistent with other activities. And this also, this is a section that deals with pile drivers and steam shovels and things like that.
Can you refresh our memory as to the problem with the yelling? I mean, I know there's like free speech issues, but does that come under another provision somewhere?
Yeah, as I recall, there was just some, it was just sort of, wasn't sure how you would enforce that.
I think I can speak to the, sorry, Mr. Cerna. Apologies for the interruption, but I think I can speak to this a little more as it's less of a planner's concern and more of a city attorney's concern. In reviewing this, and I've already presented this comment to Mr. Cerna and Kyle as well. I can tell you that I think we should have the discussion broadly around this, around the noise section to see if you have any issues with the revisions presented, but this is likely to be substantially revised. There's some more recent jurisprudence on challenges to noise ordinances, on vagueness, and better articulating the plainly audible standard. So like yelling would really subject you to a void for vagueness challenge. How do I know what you consider, what officer so-and-so considers yelling may be just, animated to the next one. And so it doesn't provide consistency and clear expectations. And so with noise ordinances, there's been some more recent jurisprudence, some of which I've even litigated in the last year and a half. Some ordinances that have been struck down, and some of our language here needs to provide, I think, some better objective criteria like plainly audible from X feet. And while there is some reference to defining the terms loud and ruckus, I think more can be done to tighten this up.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely.
All right, I believe the next change is in chapter 30. Oh, wait.
And while he's looking at that, I would also say we also need to review for just sort of those Reed v. Gilbert, those same concerns that come up in sign codes come up here. If you have sounds for political campaigns versus sounds for music, or rock music is fine, but rap music is not. You guys don't have that, but we need to make sure we carefully go through this and make sure we don't have anything that could be interpreted as, content-based restrictions.
Understood, thank you.
Okay, section 2262, we deleted what is unnecessary language. Just allows you, if you are the owner, to conduct maintenance on your property and landscaping between the hours of 7 AM to 6 PM.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
That's what I was referring to earlier. Was there a reason we would let the homeowner start mowing at 7 as opposed to a landscaping person?
Yeah, that's I guess that's just to allow the owner to do it. That's in the existing code that the owner is allowed to do it at that time. Well, actually, we could change that to 8 as well, I guess.
I think it might make
I
sense.
missed that.
That makes more sense.
That way my wife can't tell me to get up at 6.
Yeah.
There you go.
That much better. And you know what, in the 6 PM part, I know sometimes, like when it's really hot now, it is preferable if I'm gonna mow in the afternoon to, start mowing a little bit later. I don't know what you guys think about that. I mean, it's not like I don't think.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with them
8
mowing till 8 o'clock.
8 to 8.
Yeah.
Because
8 to 8.
it's too hot in the summer.
Yeah.
And everything's wet in the mornings. That's my thoughts. Everyone agree, disagree? Frank?
Are you gonna have landscapers?
Well, I don't think the
No,
landscape.
This is just the homeowners.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
So
that.
it's 8 AM to 8 PM.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the landscaper stays the same.
right. Because they make a lot more noise.
Well, these guys pay taxes.
Things going in. Perfect.
All right, chapter 30. This is where we did some moving of, let's see, dock, seawalls and wharves. That's moved to chapter 94. I think that's it for chapter
Yeah, it's
30.
really cool that many of these split topics. You find it over here in this section, you find it over here in this section. It's gonna be so refreshing to have it all dialed in to where, okay, I wanna know what I can do to my house or what I can do to my seawall or whatever. You go to one chapter and there it all is.
Good point.
Very cool.
All right, chapter 38. This was just a minor change about the decals. 38-109. We just struck the part about the registration address and the valid driver's license address shall match the city address of the leased property. And then jumping to chapter 50, we move 50-1, road intersection visibility to chapter 94 as well.
Wait, hold on one second.
All right,
So what's the verification process for a renter? I see, okay, you've got I guess the vehicle documented in subsection A2 shows that it's registered to that address. Is that what it's saying?
Yeah, so the vehicle is registered to the applicant. They have the valid lease. It's really that they have at least a 3-month lease. That they're proving that they're actually renting. And then, but the problem is when someone moves, say every 6 months or is like a year lease, they're not changing. I mean, they're supposed to, but they're not, a lot of times, or they're renting a place and they have another place that they own that their license is tied to. It's difficult. We run into a lot of issues with having the driver's license in that rental property, whether it's a year lease or a 6-month lease. And they're still limited to 2. They have to have the valid driver's license. They have to have the valid vehicle registration with the lease. It seems like a little bit overkill where it creates more of a problem for someone trying to get a rental decal.
Okay, all right. And so they have an out-of-state license plate on their car and you're gonna put that plate number on the sticker, correct? Okay.
And they're limited to 2. And they, again, they have to be have a lease in their name.
So they can have an out-of-state license, they can have out-of-state registration, out-of-state license plate. And all they need is a 3-month lease and they can buy a sticker that lasts them an entire year.
Well, if it was like in that situation, we would be making a note of what the lease was, and document it, but typically it's a Florida state license and Florida registration that we rarely see. If we could change it to a valid Florida vehicle registration.
Yeah, I don't know how everyone feels about that.
So if they're just coming down to Florida, 3 months out of the year, then they're not gonna change their driver's license or their license plate, right? That's what you're saying. They're still gonna have
Yeah,
an out-of-state driver's license and out-of-state license plate. What you're saying is really not that much of a problem. So if I come in there and I get a decal and I get it in February, it's good for the balance of the year, but I'm only gonna be here 3 months and then I leave.
and then you're riding around the rest of the country with your new sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a car today. When you brought this up, it had a Bella Beach sticker on it. It stopped at the light and the tag number didn't match the tag on the car. So I'm thinking, did the guy sell the car? And the sticker stayed on,
Yeah, good question. Well, but see, that's a
Better put
red
it on.
flag because the police, if they're checking the stickers.
they're checking
it
the
doesn't
number.
match.
Yeah.
All right, well, I don't think there's a reason why we should penalize anyone for renting and they're within our municipal code.
This is not a situation that happens all the time. It's probably a handful a year.
Okay.
So it's, you know, if we see something suspicious, we'll take a note.
All right, chapter 50.
It's like page 82.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Good. Good change.
Right there.
Oh, this is more about 50-134, more about the fees. That shall be established by resolution.
Another resolution for fees.
Yeah.
And another added note, as we generally go through 50, Mr. Saran and I have exchanged communication on this, but we're going to, I need to review this based on some of the statutory preemptions that have been adopted, specific to our abilities to regulate within our right of way for some telecommunications infrastructure. And so we'll need to check for that, as well, as that was largely preempted in the last 4 years.
All right, then concurrency management. The changes I made to this section really to be consistent with what Pinellas County is doing with mobility management. It really won't affect for the most part, what you do, what you see on a day-to-day basis. You don't get that many large developments is really what it would affect. A larger development where they're redeveloping. You don't have that much vacant land to develop, but if there was a large redevelopment, then they would go through the mobility management system. But this is what other communities have been going towards. So deleting the transportation level of service. And again, this is just our suggestion to be consistent, but you can certainly keep what you have currently. So rather than the proportionate fair share system that you have now, this switches it to a mobility management system. And it really recognizes that you also, if you were to get a major development, you really can't widen any roads to increase capacity. So it requires a payment of a mobility fee.
I think it's more current and well laid out, not infallible, like unbelievable to think that at some point that there may be some try to redevelop each side of the community. But to me, it lays out what the requirements would be in case that ever was something pursued.
Okay. So the new language works better. You feel like?
Yeah, I think it's more current. Does this tie into a comprehensive plan at all?
It should be consistent with what you have in your comp plan. I'll double check that, but yeah, I think I recall checking that you're already set up to do this way in your comp plan. And it is, other communities are doing it and it does work. It is working in other communities, especially on the beach. All right, let's see. Then it looks like there's some comments in here from the FDM reviewer. I don't know if we need to go through those.
She's Rebecca Quinn. She's the consultant for ordinances through FDM, so the state floodplain management office, so I had her review to bring our flood code chapter as up to date as we can. One of her major changes was she asked me, and I went along with the recommendation that we don't have floodways. And we never will have a floodway or a riverine flooding zone, given our geography. So we just kind of removed all that. It's just extra clutter.
You're a certified floodplain manager, Chris. Can you define a floodway?
I don't know, I can't find the exact definition. I couldn't when I took my test, but I know it now.
Yeah, all right.
But I could pull it out on a map and apply
Yeah.
how it works. And then let's see as we go through. She made a lot of comments to the side. This is not finalized, depending on where we end up. She'll help draft the ordinance for our attorney to review.
Okay.
Yeah, and I reviewed the comments as well, and I think we incorporated them into our version, and they seem to be good comments. Definitely you have to meet state requirements, so it's another good reason to go along with those changes.
There was some sections where it says about tanks,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to get to it. Oh, before we get to that point, in the definitions, which is on page 117, there's a market value meaning, that's redefined based on the best template right now that they currently used by the state, which gives an appraiser an exact criteria to do their appraisal for the flood purposes, as opposed to just saying this house is worth such and it's certified. She made some changes that we needed for manufactured homes and recreational vehicles, even though we don't allow them, we still needed to have the language. Okay, so you get to 74, 167. And the way it was worded in our previous ordinance was underground liquid propane tanks. It says that throughout, liquid propane tanks, but there's other types of tanks. So it is all tanks. That's why that was crossed out.
Does that work for above ground tanks? Are there,
There are above ground tanks, but they need to be secured either at the flood height, the base flood elevation, or secured so that they can't drift or, become missiles during a flood.
Now, we're not allowing any type of manufactured home today
We
in the city.
we do.
74, 144.
I'd have to look at the definition.
Manufactured homes is defined in 15C
174.
74-144. Because FEMA just came out with a whole new.
Right, I think that was part of the discussion in the past year and a half of removing that when Mr. Cerna first came before, not even specific to this land code review, Kyle.
Okay. Is that in the
I believe that's
definitions?
similar language that's being required by
Yeah.
FEMA
I'd
and
have to
federal
check
floodplain
that.
review, but I could be mistaken. That's not my specialty.
Yeah,
We'll
they
check.
just rewrote the whole manufacturing code a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Kyle, this is the language.
Yeah, but is it defined what a manufactured home is? That's the right question. Because people do find them differently.
So You have term manufactured building or modular building or factory built building is defined on.
Could you pull your mic a little closer?
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. The term manufactured building is defined on page 4 of 64, which is actually page 131 of the blue. If you're looking at the blue copy, that is one place where the term manufactured building is defined. But then under dwelling there, it does contemplate manufactured homes, which is on page 10 of the blue text.
Mobile home is,
So I'll have to cross-check that, but I believe if it's a manufactured building, so it's prefabricated and then brought in. That,
Well, the difference between a manufactured home, manufactured homes meet HUD standards, where a modular will meet the current building code standards
okay,
of the state. Which HUD meets those too, but it usually comes in on a frame. Module will be set with a crane because it'll come in with.
okay,
You'll roll a manufactured home into a foundation. Set it, butt it together. And you won't do that with a prefab or modular.
It may be that this requires additional review based on it, as this is a product of the FDEM guidelines to ensure that there's no of the FDEM consultant review. See if FDEM has their own definition that they're operating with those comments.
Yeah, we'll double check that. I know the code does specifically prohibit mobile homes. But yeah, we'll double check the manufactured home. I thought we did, so I just want to be sure.
Look at FEMA's bulletin, P-85, second edition, November 2009, and I don't know what the new one is. But there were some real rickety homes built years ago. That's why they redid all this stuff.
okay. I don't know if you are familiar with LIMWA on a FEMA flood map. It's a limited wave action zone. You have A zones, which all Dollar Beach is an AE zone, which gives you a specific base flood elevation based on the map. There's something called V zones, which are high velocity zones, which have higher standards, higher requirements. Where you get flooding that creates waves that you need to have the homes built and foundations built stronger so that they don't get knocked over by all the force of the water. So the LIMWA is a limited wave action zone. It's defined now on the maps by like a black line with some triangles on it, and that's a zone that's not waves over 3 feet in height, but from 1.5 to 3 feet waves that can occur with flooding, and it can cause additional damage to homes built in those zones. And the newest version of the Florida Building Code recently adopted that all what you call LIMWA or coastal A zones are built to V zone specifications. So we do have properties in Dollar Beach that are considered coastal A zones. There is one difference. The Florida Building Code currently allows you to have backfilled stem walls in these zones, and what's required for V zones, which is built on pilings or columns. So we have the breakaway walls. So the current ordinance is drafted right now to make all coastal A zones treated like a V zone, which would discontinue the use of backfilled stem walls. The benefit of this is
Warren, you said just for the A zone, not the AE zone.
for the coastal A zone, so LIMWA.
Yeah.
So the benefits of this is we build on a backfilled stem wall that similar to the way this building's built. If there's no storage or anything usage underneath, so it's really not a building that's elevated to where you can park a car, like walk into. It's more of just built up just enough that the foundation's secure and it's above the BFE. So there are some other communities that give me a list that have done this. Bel Air Shore has done it, Clearwater, Indian Shore, Madeira Beach, Reddington Shores, and Treasure Island. Something to consider, we don't have to do it. I don't know of anyone currently with new construction that has built on stem walls in these type of zones. They usually like to go with the columns or pilings. But that is something that would benefit only because it's less floodwater diverted when you have structures that are built on the columns and breakaway walls in those zones, so that is not diverted to other structures, causing more flooding. So for consideration, that is in there. The other thing is if we did have commercial, it disallows commercial dry flood proofing, which is a method that is left open to commercial zoning. It causes a lot of problems. It's hard to regulate. But again, we don't have commercial, so that would not be a change.
Does it need to be in there at all?
It doesn't.
The former thing that you said, is the point of that as an additional option?
It's an additional option that other communities have adopted.
Sounds good.
But again, we can do some more research on it. It doesn't have to be done currently. Florida Building Code disallows everything else. Everything has to be built with these standards, except you're allowed to build on a backfilled stem wall. That's the only exception.
Now, this is the first I've heard of this. Have you been getting many requests for it?
No.
No? Okay.
Not many people even know about it.
What's that?
Not many people even know this level of
Okay.
code.
So let's think about what that would do, especially for the people down south. If they decided to rebuild, they wouldn't have a useless first story. Is that right?
So if they built on a backfilled stem wall, they would have a useless story, but they'd be able to achieve their BFE where they need to be, with as minimal as possible, elevating just to that point.
And what's that height right now?
Depends on what zone you're in, usually about a 9 or a 10. But the other option is that you build up on piles or the columns, and you're only allowed so much space down. This isn't like what you see on some of the fingers where they have the garage storage and the flood vents. In limit zones, you can't do that already. You have to build up like you're in a V zone. You have to be on columns or piles and breakaway walls, and you can only have so much square footage of enclosure. So there's already high limitations. It's a small little nuance.
What does that do to the aesthetics of Bel Air Beach? Does it change anything?
I wouldn't say it changes the aesthetics at all. I think it just gives you a little bit more for these zones. If we were to flood to a point where your elevated structures, the walls break away, that water is kind of absorbed underneath the structure as opposed to diverting to cause more flooding in other areas. So I think that's the positive to that.
And this provides a more economical way of rebuilding without having to do 2 full stories, correct?
You concerned about using the bottom structure, not getting taxed?
What's that now?
Are you concerned about the bottom structure being a livable structure?
No, not
because that was brought up before.
necessarily. This is I mean, it sounds to me like it would be too short to live in it. It would be really usable property. It's more of a crawl space, maybe a tall crawl space, but it's the house, the bottom story would now be up off the ground, and but you wouldn't have to build all the way up to a second story to be able to rebuild. I believe
Almost like a
that's
split
that's
level.
what you're saying.
Almost like a split level, the lower level is open or breakaway, right?
It wouldn't be breakaway with a stem wall. It would just be backfilled. You wouldn't be required to have flood vents, but you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. It'd be like this building.
So no flood
got
vents,
you.
just the breakaway walls, right?
So stem wall,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be backfilled.
Yeah.
So it'll be the minimum elevation needed on block. But you can't do anything with underneath. So it gives you that option of building just high enough.
You block it in, you fill it in with
Yeah.
dirt, and then you begin construction.
Right.
Okay.
The other option is you're up on on piles or columns and, those are typically, 8, 10 feet and then, you're allowed, you have the breakaway walls, but you can have solid enclosure. I think it's 900 square feet is the limitation that you can actually have storage down there.
But you can't have any power, you can't have any.
Yeah, you
plumbing,
can't have
Can't have
utility.
anything that would,
Unless it's the electrical that's the new water.
right.
ones that we-
I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay.
What does everyone else think?
No, I think that just as a general principle, keeping up with new innovations and ways to do things, as long as they're aesthetically consistent with our community standards, I think is a good thing.
You're just elevating a slab home is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And if you,
Right.
if you watch the news, there's so many homes in Florida that are just one floor and they were taken out of the flood zone this past year with this FEMA 2.0 in it. And it just showed Debbie just wiping out some of these neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
And now FEMA's gonna come in
Yeah.
and reevaluate them, and they're gonna be back to the 50% state. You know what I'm saying? And these homes are like 10 years old.
Hmm.
And they're all one-story homes. It's just amazing, you know?
There's other code changes to the new construction that we're reviewing also, correct?
Refresh my memory.
The one about.
Oh, the height requirement. Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So that's all I got for chapter 74.
What page are we on now? You lost me here.
Now we're gonna be at 126, which is chapter 78.
And this is just moving that chapter to chapter 94. And then, yeah, moving to chapter 94 where most of the changes are, where we've moved everything.
Right.
So a lot of these, a lot of the definitions that are added are they're moved definitions. We did put it in the notes. Accessory structure, we did add to that definition, bird baths or fountains of not greater than 4 feet in height. Based on some input we received from Kyle. So. Building height, this is a new definition we added. And this is how most communities do it. You measure the building, the height of your building from your design flood elevation plus freeboards. So you don't have to have a lower building if you have a higher minimum flood elevation. We added a definition of coastal construction control line, just for clarification, and coastal high hazard area.
Right.
Condominium, we changed that's, you'll see that referenced elsewhere where I think the intent is really multifamily. So we changed the definition of condominium to multifamily. That'll be reordered to be alphabetical when we get to it. Added a definition of the design flood elevation based on the FEMA requirements and what the city has adopted. Floor area ratio, we added just some clarification of what's not included in floor area ratio in case there's ever a question about what counts and what doesn't count. So we added a definition of gazebo, and we added some language on that elsewhere. Hedge, we clarified that certain plantings can qualify as a hedge, like bamboo, areca palms, anything that's grown that it functions as a hedge. So try to come up with a definition there where people are planting what's typically not a hedge plant, but if planted together, it could count.
I
as a
can
hedge.
assure you, it'll still be confusing
Yeah,
and a topic of controversy.
yeah. No, I agree.
I thought hedges were limited to 6 feet.
We touch on that. We'll get to that. We changed some definition. We
8
changed some
feet.
height requirements.
8 feet, but bamboo and arecas are tall plants.
Well, you could
No, it'd
still
be
control
trimmed.
the height, yeah.
Oh, okay,
We're
but
saying
this,
they have to be 8 feet is tallest.
Yeah, and where you can,
height of 8 feet above existing grade, so we still have 8 feet here. Oh, I see, I'm sorry, got it. I got it.
So what I've learned as I've lived here is that if it goes long enough unchecked, it turns into a tree.
And Eureka, that's.
You know, that's it. So if they plant something that's a shrub or a hedge or whatever, and you don't want it to become a tree, and now it's a protective species, then you want to make sure that you report your neighbor if you're not happy with that happening
Before it's a tree.
before it's a tree.
we added a definition of mobile home. And then the previous definition of mobile home, I think the intent there was more of a motor home or an RV or a camper. So we just changed mobile home to motor home. Let's see, off-street parking. Deleted that last sentence there. I'm not sure how that would be enforced there. We have 280 square feet, which includes the access drives and maneuver areas. I'm not even sure how you measure that, so we just struck that part. We added a definition of, oh no, I guess we moved the definition of portable spa. The blue indicates where we made changes to the existing definition. We changed it from that which is not permanently connected to an outside water source to electrical source. Satellite antenna, that just a moved definition. Same with spa. Structure, that was just copied from 10-72. Thought it'd be useful to have a definition of structure. Swimming pool, that's just a move definition. So that gets us through the definitions.
Can we take a break? I think we need 5 minutes.
There, after, say.
Down stretch.
One more hour and Kyle's buying pizza.
Oh, we won't last that long. Hour.
Yeah. Hopefully this is that. Right.
134.
134.
Now we're up to section 94. Three, or let's see, where's.
94-6134.
Yeah, 94-6. We changed the title of that section because there was another section that we're deleting that had that title. And
I don't know what this means. For yard abutting public.
Like abutting a public park. So if you're right next to the,
Oh, okay,
Correct.
landscaping for yard abutting public ground, public land, public
Yeah.
something.
I think this is, what I'm reading out of it is, if you have a yard, here's your guidelines. Some people don't have yards, such as condos. Did I get that right?
They wouldn't need,
we could, well, I'm on your comment about public, yeah, we could add public property if that would clarify that.
would. Thank you.
Cause yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what, I think I just copied the section title.
You know, otherwise, did that mean it's visible to the public, or I didn't quite know what it meant, so that's helps.
I guess in this area, it means just abutting the public right of way. But there's other sections where it does mean the park, when it's applying to like hedges and fences.
Yeah, I think it would apply to both land, right of way and parks. So.
Property is right away.
Let's see, we added, traffic hazards H, the roadway intersection visibility standard. I highlighted the section number because typically that's the last thing we do is make sure the section numbers are correct as you add and delete sections. So if you see highlighting, sometimes it's because we're going to go back and correct the sections. Okay, unobstructed passage, J, we just added a requirement that being more specific about vehicles. Let's see. We must allow unobstructed passage of pedestrians and vehicles and shall at a minimum include an 8-foot minimum vertical clearance above public sidewalks and 15-foot minimum vertical clearance above public roads. So I've seen this in other codes and just adding that clarification.
Glad you did that.
Mulch, we talked about non-float, we added non-floating mulch. I think that came up at one of the workshops. And we just added there about prevention of movement of mulch from irrigation or rainwater. And prohibition of organic or inorganic floating materials in the right of way.
While we're on this subject about that, a couple residents brought up to me during sandbagging about people's pools, but, and I know I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, it's diatomaceous, earth, they call it, for,
Oh, yeah, that's used to treat.
and they say it's cancer causing or whatever, and people are pumping it into their, you know what I'm saying?
You throw it out for flea prevention, I believe. A certain type of earth it's something that the fleas eat, and literally they dehydrate.
Well, they use it in pool filters, because when I had a pool, I know
Oh, that too.
okay, and then people are saying people are pumping their pools out into the street. And then goes into the intercoastal.
But there's certain pool filters that have that
I had
material in
one
it.
years ago, it had,
Mine's
I
paper.
call it, I used to call it dirt, but it's diatomaceous something, I forget. You got it. Yeah, Is it cancer causing it? Does it say anything? Yeah. Two people brought it up to me and I said, I never, I don't have a pool anymore, but I used to use it. It was good stuff when I used it, yeah. Right. Mhm. Yeah, it would. It would just coat all the fingers in the filter and that, yeah.
All right, let's continue.
Thank you.
Now we're up to administration,
Yes, sir.
section 94-62.
94-62, yes. Here we just added for clarification, RM District 1, RL District 2, just so just easier to note than just District 1 or District 2. Added one criteria for variance that demonstrate that the variance requested does not increase the maximum density of development permitted on the property beyond that maximum permitted by the underlying zoning district. I believe that's already included in the code, so we're just putting that as a criteria. More about the fees for variances. Okay, this is a section that you can see 94-69. It seems redundant with the one that we changed the title for. It does say yard for yard abutting public, so that's why we carried that over, but we could not see a reason. I couldn't find a reason for keeping that same section. Local planning agency, let's see. I believe this was moved. Yeah, this was moved from chapter 78. We just updated the title of the Forward Pinellas there in that section 94-71. Let's see. We deleted 3 that's on your screen because we changed the definition of how you measure building height, so that becomes unnecessary. We just added clarification, paragraph C, all repair, reconstruction or replacement under subsection 7 shall be subject to floodplain management regulations, so just adding that clarification. Uh, 94-162, this is where it was using condominium units, where I believe the intent is there for it to be multifamily units. And same with 94-164. Elevations and grading, let's see, we added some language here about the lowest floor elevation shall be at least 18 inches above the crown of the road. That's copied from section 62-73, and more sections copied from that section. We did add under G, the blue, which is clarified for parcels located along Gulf Boulevard, not to exceed 24 inches above the crown of Gulf Boulevard. So allows you to go a little higher due to the higher elevation of Gulf Boulevard there. And then adding H, just clarifying that grading shall further be subject to stormwater and drainage discharge prohibitions of section 62-73. Parking, just again clarifying changing condominiums to multifamily. All off-street parking areas shall be paved. We just added with asphalt or constructed with concrete or paver bricks for parking. More multifamily, changing from condo to multifamily. And then we deleted that section under paragraph 4, because again, this is something that I'm not sure,
Not enforceable.
yeah, it's not enforced, so yeah. 94-173, we just clarified that setbacks, things that can be in the setback can also include pool pumps, filters, and standby generators. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of those as well as compressor units. 94-174, could not find any county code or county code requirements for access to Gulf Boulevard and Causeway Boulevard. We just changed that to access management standards of the Florida Department of Transportation for those. Heights, we added, this came up in one of the work sessions, allowing 3 habitable stories, constructed alongside a garage or storage, or 2 habitable stories over a garage or storage area. This is, I believe, consistent with what the council discussed. We changed BFE to design flood elevation plus freeboard.
That's only applicable if you're above base flood elevation.
Correct. We added gazebo there. You recall we added a definition, so we allowed a gazebo to also be permitted as a detached building. All right. Okay, the C and D are, I believe there was discussion early on about prohibiting the rental of amenities with the house, like your pool, things like that. I know the attorney will probably want to weigh in on that, but that was from, we did find that in another community. I'm not sure where we got that, but I do have it in my notes.
Yeah, and to the extent that's been raised by legal, I would just say that, in addition to concerns about rental for, transient rentals housing and the law rarely catches up to society and how fast, especially with all these tech platforms. And there are some platforms that have gone into renting portions of the property. You can rent out your deluxe tricked out kitchen that you made a chef's kitchen. You rent out your kitchen, rent out your pool is where it started.
Right.
And so people would say, oh, I'm not renting overnight stays. It's not a problem. I'm renting out amenities of my home and trying to some language trying to address that.
Boat docks, boat lifts, that's a one in high demand, and I can see the attraction if you're not using it.
Yeah, that's good.
For docks, we added a smaller setback when you have those pie-shaped lots where the lot lines are converging towards the water. You really get penalized because that you eventually don't have any setback there. So we allow six foot. It allows the dock to go within 6 feet of the property line. If you wanted to go closer, you could request a variance, but without a variance, you could go 6 feet in those cases. And then we just add some clarifying language. Docks shall be further subject to the standards and requirements of Division 3, Article 5 of this chapter. elevations and grading, this is where we talk about the pools. Well, the lowest finished floor elevation shall be at least 18 inches above the crown of the road. And in no case shall the finished floor elevation be below the design flood elevation plus freeboard. That is a requirement, but just having the clarifying language in here. We do have concrete, we did add the concrete slab or graded pad for garage, covered parking, pool equipment areas. Let's see. Allowed to be 18 inches above the crown of the road or 24 inches above the crown of Gulf Boulevard.
Does this solve the variance issue, Kyle?
That's gonna be in the, when we get down to the pools specifically.
Okay.
And then we did add a section there about structural fill shall be limited to no more than 24 inches above the crown of the road. That's really what most beach communities are doing, is just limiting the fill. And that prevents where people are mounding up their lots. And then specifying that grading shall be subject to the requirements that you already have in section 62-73. Let's see. All right, parking of, this is motor homes, it did say mobile homes. Motor homes, RVs, we just added there, such vehicles may be parked in along the side, in and along the side of the house and in the rear for landlocked lots, provided that such vehicles is obscured from view by an adjacent property owner and from public rights of way by use of an opaque fence or living fence. And then we clarified there that that it shall not extend, the vehicle shall not extend more than 5 feet above the opaque fence or living fence. So just trying to come up with some standards there for how you obscure those vehicles when they're not in the driveway. And then we just,
So this relates to motor homes, and motor homes included trailers, right?
yeah, like a camper trailer.
Yes.
Yes.
And other types of trailers too, because we had utility trailers covered in that, but people had box trailers. That's not the same as a utility trailer, so. there was
Correct, yes.
Back and forth.
Well, that's a welcome change.
And this is boats and trailers. Yeah, we did change it to, we did strike utility trailers, made it other trailers. Yeah, just to get out of the trying to list all the types of trailers you can have, and then added the language about how they're obstructed from view when they're not, when they're parked along the side or rear of the house. Okay, and this is for construction trailers. We added a time limit there. For construction, it is limited to pool installations or renovations, limited to interior renovations, a single trailer or similar vehicle used in conjunction with the construction is not that is not removed daily, must be parked on a stabilized parking area, meeting the requirements of section 10-77-2. So yeah, apparently this is an issue. So we just stated that you can't have it parked in the front yard unless you're removing it every day. Air conditioners, condensers, pool pumps and filters and standby generators. Again, just the adding those to the requirements for the noise restrictions. 94 219, we specified that rooftop decks and balconies are not permitted. And then these are all the setbacks, and I'll probably miss the change that we made.
Just making sure. that the version-
Okay, yeah, so Bellevue Estates lot, we changed that from lot 1 and 2 to lots 1 through 12. I don't think we could find where the other lots went, so or where they were referenced, so we specified that change on Bellevue Estates.
We had 10 lots that it was not written at all.
They were gone.
No setbacks.
Wow.
Not uncommon for those things to happen, like as you go through versioning and you know, somebody backed out of a 12 to a 2 by accident.
Mhm.
Just, it's good that, I say that to say it's a testament to why you do this process. like this.
Absolutely.
Okay, 94 251 fences, walls and hedges. We had a lot of back and forth on this one. And so we came up with a hedge may be grown in the front setback area of a residential property, but shall not exceed 6 feet in height. And we came up with a lot of examples, just looking at Google Maps, and we see where there was a lot of hedges that were in the front yard that definitely exceeded 3 feet, and we thought we could live with 6 feet as long as it's not a visibility restriction.
That's a major change. That absolutely will change the look of our community. There right now, everything's open, you can see. And now we're saying, oh, 6 feet up, you can have totally privacy. What? How close to the driveway, to the street?
Typical right of way goes 15 to 20 feet from the edge of the road.
Why are we doing that?
Because about half the houses are already.
Everybody has that. Yeah. I mean, 3 feet's pretty low.
That's not really a hedge. That's more of a ornamental.
6 feet is pretty high.
The number of hearings you've had.
I
on
mean,
it's a hedge
I'm
is
6
illustrated.
feet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm 6'4", yeah.
Yeah.
But Kyle, I mean, it brought up a good point.
Is that
When they
agreeable
Google
or-
it, there's a lot of
Yeah.
houses. I mean, we'd have to go through and tell people, cut.
We used to do that.
Well, it was what I was gonna say. Are we doing this because we don't want to pester those who already have it? Or are we doing it because there's actually a need to go to 6 feet?
I remember a few years ago, that was a big thing here. The hedges,
In the front yard.
everything. I remember our old city manager, on one of the houses on our street, the guy came down, wanted him to cut those trees down. He says no trees are exempt, but the guy was growing stuff and he was exposing himself. That's why he wanted the hedges so high.
And then I guess my next question is are people complaining because they can't grow to 6 feet? Or is there a need for this change? Or is it just that,
That's awful high.
yeah, I don't know.
I think the idea of a hedge is to create some privacy, some obscure a little bit from one property to another, as well as ornamental purposes. I had one neighbor that had lovely sea grapes that were regularly trimmed, but they were higher than 6 feet. And it was a big deal to, cut them or higher than the limit. And it was a big deal to cut them down. And it was a very pretty, well done tropical look. So I'm all for landscaping that is consistent with our environment, being in a kind of a tropical
Well,
area.
the word landscaping is what we consider our environment. It used to be 3 foot. Now we're gonna expand that landscaping environment to 6 feet. That's what landscaping is all about. I mean, if we're looking for a natural tropical look, then we're not gonna have any type of heights.
I didn't say natural, but just in terms of, well kept.
That's the key, is well kept. And
Who
I can,
defines that?
I used to have a neighbor that did not maintain well, and they maintained the height requirement, but it was awful. You know, it was their choice of foliage was, it was just completely out of control. And unfortunately, I have good neighbors now, but I'm not for this one.
I agree.
So Kyle, when it says a hedge may be grown in the front setback area.
Mhm.
So that's how far away?
On the front of the house, usually 25 feet.
So 25 feet from like the curb.
Um,
It'd have to be that far away from the curb.
so from the curb, usually the edge of the road is about 15 to 20 feet to get to the private property.
Okay.
Then you have another 25 to the house. So,
And see, this is in conflict with what we currently have for homes. If you like, I'd love to have a extension on the front of my home, but I can't because it would go out in front of my neighbor's homes. And there's a certain line that's set up and the code prevents you from doing that. So I don't know. I think we all moved here for a reason, and I don't want to make a dramatic change like that. But
You're doubling it.
So this is talking about a hedge, right? So somebody has multiple bushes.
Right.
So there's a lot of houses that have that,
there are.
like in the front of their house, relatively close to the front door-ish area.
they've not been approached and dealt with.
No, I'm just saying, do we have
So
that?
that's my ask. If we're not going to adjust it to make it more, bring people closer to what we're enforcing, then we're gonna have to find a way to enforce it so that we don't have code that isn't being enforced.
I thought we were enforcing it at 6 feet. They were telling people to chop things down to 6 feet.
Yeah, once you get past the front setback. But it's 8 feet now. So we up that. But the problem is, once you get to the edge of the front edge of the house, the only thing you're allowed is a 3-foot hedge. There's so many people that have, some people have close to 8 feet.
I misunderstood. I thought we were talking.
Windows.
In between the windows?
Yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me
So
understand then what we're talking about. We're talking about lights like side,
Right in front of the
between,
house.
we're talking about in front of the house, not the side lots.
yeah, so imagine you step out on your front porch or right out your front door and you're able to look to the right and see down the street. You're able to look down to the left and see down the street. And 2 or 3 years from now, if you change that, you'll only see this view instead of this view.
Unless you step out 3 feet.
More than that.
Could somebody draw a picture? Because I'm not quite clear what we're talking about. We're not talking about side lots, excuse me, the side line, property lines. We're talking about the
The
front.
hedges are on the side property lines, but
Yes.
once they get to the front edge of the house, they can't be higher than 3 feet.
That's what it says now.
And they're gonna extend that to 6 feet. Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
The front edge of the house, meaning,
where he just explained, you step out your front door.
The front of your house where you have
Here.
windows. You may
Yeah.
have windows on both sides. In between the windows, there's not windows. You
yes,
know, and so like it's been said a couple of times, initially when you put those little, what are those green and yellow things? The plants, what are they called? Patty? Green and yellow.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, pittisporms.
Huh.
So then you put them in and they're this high, but then in 2 years from now, they're 6 feet high.
This is what we have right now.
I think most of them, a lot of people have higher than 6 feet now. I mean,
A lot of
higher-
people
higher
do
than
because-
higher than 3, I should say.
Yes, yeah, it's because it's not been maintained. It's not, we've not gone after them in code enforcement.
The discourse you're having isn't what's out there. It's based on what's out there. Is that a change we want to make to adapt to our current reality for some lots, or do we wish to hold firm to the existing code and enforce as appropriate and educate as appropriate? And the question now is, are we changing it because we want to change it or because like, well, it's been. And I don't mean this casually, just in the way that it's being
Right,
characterized. It's been flouted long enough and it's kind of changed the community a little bit. Do we wish to recognize that change or not?
Is the objection the height or is the objection that they're poorly kept? Not trimmed and,
In my case, it would be both.
I was gonna say yes, because I think.
Oh.
How
the
about
answer
like
to your
when
question from
a lot of these people have underground wiring? So now you've got your electrical box, which is about 4 feet off the ground, 5 feet. Now you're gonna allow that to cover it up with shrubbery or
But is that a hedge?
would be if you planted a hedge near your electrical box.
But I mean, our definition of a hedge is like multiple.
That's a good question. What do you define a hedge
Yeah.
as, you know?
Yeah.
Your definition of the hedge might be different than mine.
This clearly says fences, walls, hedges shall be permitted, but not placed beyond or overgrowing the waterfront facing side. Oh, this is the back. Sorry, I'm looking at the one.
Right.
Mayor, is your microphone on?
What's that?
Is your
Like-
microphone on?
Oh, sorry. It keeps blanking out. I don't know what's going on with it.
okay. So in sub 1, it's 8 feet on the side or the rear.
Mhm.
And on the front setback is what we're talking about. Should it be 3 feet or 6 feet?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you look at, I don't know if I can put this up. If you just look at one street in particular, like Alita is a good example of a lot of people with hedges. Let's see if I can share screen. I might have to override yours.
Yeah. I can stop share if that's.
So close to the end.
It's a big one.
Those bushes.
Pretty good at that, Kyle.
Let's stop.
We could split the difference.
There. All right, now if I zoom in some.
1.5 feet.
Like you'll see here, if you look at, let's zoom in more. If you look at each house, the front of the house is where your front setback typically starts, and then you'll see the lines, which is the actual property lines. So everybody with their head, like the lining of shrubs on their side property lines that are going out to their front property lines are in violation essentially, because these are all way higher than 3 feet.
Now, okay, let's say that currently they were 3 feet. Are they still in violation because they're in the setback?
No, because if they're 3 feet, they wouldn't be in violation, but they would be in violation if you look, a lot of them encroach into the right of way.
I mean, the right of way.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is because they're in the right of way, are they in violation regardless of the height?
Yes, I mean, the right of way is kind of a different animal because there's a lot of things in the right of way that really shouldn't be in a right of way, but we can't go and force everything like that. We
Right.
just,
Well, if that's the case, then I certainly don't want 6 feet blocking the right of way.
sure.
Because you wouldn't be able to see. You wouldn't be able to.
Isn't that a
exit
safety
the driveway.
hazard too?
What?
That- that's
Isn't that
what
a
the
safety
line of
hazard
sight.
for somebody coming down,
We
police or
figured-
whatever?
The best way to tackle that was the line of sight issue. That's why we wrote it in there so many times.
Yeah.
So just as an example, the house, and I'm sorry, I don't know the address, but the house that's directly across from the 6th Street access.
Okay.
So a lot of us gather there. We know this house. It's a lovely, modern house. It has gorgeous tropical foliage. And that,
So here's a different thing. When you're on Gulf Boulevard or Causeway Boulevard, you have
Yeah.
different exceptions. You're allowed to have walls and fences 6 feet in the front setback because you're on a county road.
It's to
But-
block from the
but
traffic.
the yard that faces 6th Street.
Yeah.
Also has a lot of tropical plantings.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me be the devil's advocate here. You've got this, you showed me a street that has plenty.
Right.
Plenty of violations. Now go to a street that you know doesn't have any.
I mean,
Show me how nice and clean it is.
8th Street.
20th Street. So 8th Street. I'd have to get down to a street view on this one, but yeah, this is an example.
So
There's
now,
like one down here, lot 75 possible. Oh wait, that's not lot B. I have some,
so now you can totally change the look of that street by just altering this code to a 6 feet. Now there's an attraction. And now what you are used to because of this one code change, your entire street could look completely different. I'm not for it.
We have hedge bushes that are over here, but right there at the corner, we have this big old, what's it called, Patty? No, the palm tree. Right outside the door.
The Florida Palms.
Anyway, you come out the door, we're meeting all the requirements. You still can't see anything. Because the tree I'm referring to, or the big bush I'm referring to, it's a palm, some type of palm.
Yeah, but that's exempt.
It's a sago palm that goes shoo. So that bad boy's right there. You can't see the street. You can't see anybody that direction. Then we have several little hedge bushes that are all 3 feet. So everything in that definition meets, still can't see me.
Well, maybe I don't want to see.
Exactly. Because I'm usually in my boxer shorts.
The other thing is,
What's that,
you can
6
hide
feet
a lot
house?
easier in a 6-foot hedge than you can in a 3-foot if you're being a prowler or,
Good, yeah.
you know,
Or coyotes.
well, that's true.
It would seem to me, I mean, just generally, and for purposes of this land development code review, at least 2 of you are not in favor of this, which means in our current composition, it's unlikely to pass. I think as we're talking about workshopping this, we can advance on the draft, recognize that's not language we wish to see changed.
Yeah.
And then if and when it's presented at first and second reading, if for some reason that changes, we can always make those amendments at that stage, but given how hard you folks have worked, I don't want to.
Great recommendation.
Might encourage you.
I hear you loud and clear. City Attorney Mora, let's move on.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's all, we spent that much time. on books.
take back screen share.
All right, let's see. Paragraph 6, we just added electrical wiring shall not be placed on the surface of a fence or wall that faces the street or adjacent properties. So if somebody wants to have lights on their fence, the wiring should not be exposed to the outside.
Hmm.
And then we also added that unless they're plug-in lights, then they have to get an electrical permit. Plug-in or solar. That's number 15. Let's see, number 16, related to hedges or planting materials, trees shall be planted no closer than 3 feet to a property line. And then this is to prevent them from growing, obviously, into the adjacent property. And the language in there about them being maintained to not overhang on abutting property is already in the code. Earth berms, they were prohibited. We just changed that to permitted, subject to the elevation and gradient requirements of 94-168 of this chapter. And then 24, all walls, fences, and hedges must comply with the roadway intersection visibility requirements of oh, I left out the section number of this chapter, but yeah, we have the intersection visibility requirements. So Yeah, anything you plant has to, is subject to that, intersection visibility. And that could address your plantings in the right of way. Home occupations, 94-252. These changes are all, to be consistent with current Florida statutes, where they do allow, a limited number of persons, working there, in the home occupation, beyond just the members of the household.
That surprised me.
That is a statutory change from 2022, I believe, and it is a preemption. What you see here in Mr. Serna's proposed language is to aligns with the statute. There's little else you can do. All form in this particular instance of preemption, it was retroactive and subsumed any municipal regulation of short-term, of home-based businesses. In that regard.
Very good.
So, I say that to say as a word of caution, because while we're on the topic, I think to the extent you've seen short-term rentals as a topic of debate amongst a lot of communities, and that this is a residential use and not a commercial use, and that debate play out, I think that as more and more communities become aware of this statutory change, you are going to see that fight over what we used to call Euclidean zoning play out more and more. On like, this should be here, not there. Like, why are they able to operate a UPS depot center out of their garage, or, a watch repair shop? It makes sense in the context of like Etsy shops and accountants, but then it goes well beyond that.
Are there restrictions on, the public coming to the business?
It cannot operate in a way that changes the traffic pattern of the building. But if one person pulls up in the driveway and leaves and somebody else, no, that's seen as consistent with how a home driveway might be used.
Rather than actually spelling it out, are we better off just directing them to the statute?
It'd be worthwhile. It's the only, so some of the things in the statute, for example, as it relates to sign codes, and this is something that clouds that sign code discussion we have. It says that sign codes can be enforced for these. So if your code looks at as only residential, one of the discussions we've had is we don't have commercial. We don't need to worry about this. The home-based business preemption is one of the reasons you may wish to address it anyways, in the event it may be in your residential areas. But it says in the statute, sign codes shall be restricted in the manner set forth, that any business must still conform to sign restrictions. You can call that out there. I think you'd be just as fine to say, to strike it and point to the statute and say, home occupation shall conform to all the statutory requisites set forth in, and I forget the statutory reference.
Because if I didn't know any better and I looked at that and said, oh, well, it says, look at the statute, forget it.
And that's a drafting question, and we take our guidance from you folks as the policymakers as to how you'd like it reflected. I think 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Mayor, thoughts?
I like having things in the statute that are clear. I understand what you're thinking. I don't think that'll deter anyone that really wants to do it. And so if grandma decides she wants to have a business of her wonderful precious moments collection, and people come and go to,
As long as there's not a line of cars that are blocking or otherwise not abiding by the parking restrictions. I don't know that we would have any ability to, just because she's doing that commercial enterprise out of there, that we'd have any ability to address that elsewise. Now, of course, all other codes apply. So if they're in our right of way and blocking things, or parking on our infrastructure, or loud they're doing business at 1 a.m. and creating noise, and all those things still apply.
Wow.
There's a lot of talk of charter businesses, but essentially if you got a house and it looks like a house, you can run a charter off your dock.
a charter business?
Yeah, like
Boat charters.
say, I don't know, a couple cars full of people and put them on your boat and have them pay you to take them fishing.
Because what's the difference between your buddy pulling up and 4 people who are paying you pulling up, parking in your driveway and going out the
That's
back?
right.
We had that incident,
Yeah.
yeah, right near you. Yeah. a guy built the house with the first thing he did was put a dock in there for his charter boat. And he was going to have charter fishing being run out of, what was that, 700 or 800 harbor? I forget the house number. But anyway, so his intention was to have everybody come down the road around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Get out, get their beer and,
On the boat.
yeah, get on the boat.
They still do it. They're just smarter now.
And the main, now remember, they still do have to meet the definition of a home-based business, which contemplates people living in the structure. I don't wish to say that every home can be concerned and or wish to suggest that every home can suddenly be converted to a quickie mart or something. It does still have to be a home. It's just what you can do with your home is enhanced.
So in his example, that would be a permitted use.
Subject to all the other restrictions. I don't, as I sit here now, I don't hear anything in that hypothetical that just by virtue of somebody using their dock for commercial purposes would make it a problem.
Suddenly their driveway has 8 cars in it and it's doing this daily. That's probably a violation, but sneaking 4 or 5 people in or going and picking them up somewhere else is not a violation.
Alrighty.
Please continue.
All right. That's just another, on the screen, there's another fee there. Roadway and driveway intersection visibility, we just added some clarifying language to this. And actually, this was moved from chapter 50, but the blue are the changes that we made. That it specifying that it specifically obstructs the visibility between 2.5 feet and 10 feet above the center line of the grade of the intersection street. So that's with how a lot of communities do it. So doesn't prohibit everything in the triangle, but it just prohibits things that are between those heights. Coastal construction control line, that was moved from chapter 10. Let's see, and then we do a lot of renumbering here. Swimming pools, hot tubs and spas, this was also moved from chapter 10.
And where is the provision that related to the variances?
That is 94-293, section G. Or subsection G. We upped it to 24 inches. That
Oh, yeah, yep, I missed that. Yeah, that in blue, that means we changed that from 18 to 24.
so that gets most of them. If you have someone that's already 36, 48 inches, and they're trying to remodel their pool. In that case, they're gonna have to get a variance because it's a continuation. They're, changing the structure or expanding the nonconformity. But for a lot of the ones that were within 2 to 3 inches, this should take care of it without going too big of a window.
So we have one pending now that we're aware of that this came up.
Oh, did that come up on the one?
I think that was one of the objections that
Was
was
it?
raised.
I don't know what the measurements were on that, but it probably was pretty close to this. Check it.
94-294, the blue there is what we changed from what was moved. We just clarified RM District 1, RL District 2. Portable spas, we added paragraph 5 that such spas shall be plugged in rather than hardwired for electrical service. Again, these are portable spas.
That's what makes them portable, I guess.
Yes. Division 3, that was moved from chapter 30. We just, 94-297, we just corrected that, Pinellas County Water and Navigation, are the permit reviewers there. Catwalks, we clarified, shall be no wider than 4 feet. That's already in there, but we just added that to make it clear.
Why do we care how wide a catwalk is?
The county does.
They do.
It's because you're extending beyond the limitations of your dock. And then they're trying to keep as much out of the water as they possibly can. So they're within reason allowing you to build a dock and a catwalk, but if you build a driveway going out into the, towards the
Intercoastal.
yeah, basically where everyone has rights to take their boats, then
Not only that, when a storm comes in, it's better to clean up 3 feet than 10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see there, paragraph 8, we added a requirement for floating docks larger than 200 square feet shall require a permit through the city and shall meet the requirements of this section. I guess that's, getting requests to do floating docks. And then 94-298, we just added that clarifying language again about properties in which the lot lines converge towards the water. You can reduce the setback to 6 feet without a variance. All right, satellite antennas, this was moved from chapter 82. And then, let's see, telecommunication towers, that's just renumbering there. So all these sections are just being renumbered. Then we added Article 7, this is amateur radio station antenna structures.
You got it back up to 94-297B.
We talked about 297.
97.
Page 180.
297, 94-297.
it's not.
Yeah, you're on 175. Go up to page 180.
Oh, 180.
It used to be 297.
Oh, okay, yeah.
356. 357. 94-357, council member, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, section B. On the bottom of the page. Telecommunication. Electronic Industry Association.
Yeah, I made a note on that comment earlier.
Are we trying to get rid of the term condominium in all cases? And just
Well,
family,
when the intent is multifamily, condominium deals with ownership, and if somebody decided to turn theirs into an apartment,
okay,
that would be multifamily, but a condominium would also be multifamily.
okay.
So, yeah.
It's also very insensitive to call it a condominium.
Right on page 177, we still have the word condominium.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's supposed to be multifamily. That's what I guess I should ask.
Let me see. Yeah, in some cases, maybe should be condominium, but let me see.
One more. Right, did you pass it there? You just passed it, I think. No, 177, you're right. Up a little bit,
D.
down further,
The
right there.
in blue.
Yeah, yeah, that should probably be multifamily residential units.
Interesting, it's already in blue.
What's that?
It's interesting that it's already in blue for some reason. You must have already caught it once.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not changed to multifamily, but I think the intent should be to be multifamily, but I'll take a look at that. Um, $177.
We're gonna be talking about towers and things the next time.
The general will of the body earlier was to revisit the issue of towers, and with some insight and consideration to some of the feedback provided tonight,
So we're gonna,
rather than
Bypass it.
exhaustively try to address some of the
I agree.
deficiencies in the existing code. And I think Mr. Cerna has made some drafts that will move us in a positive direction there, and those are reflected before you, but those can be reviewed with some consideration towards some of the points raised this evening.
Yeah, so we did add this Article 7 to specifically address amateur radio station antennas and structures. And this is from a model code. And yeah, again, the intent is to address specifically ham radios.
You know, I think this opens up Pandora's box.
Mhm. Yeah, I sort of figured there might be more discussion that you'd want to have or more consideration on this. But it does allow, does specify height for amateur radio antennas.
we're gonna come back to this one. Let Randy review it and then we'll review this one section at our next meeting.
Good idea.
Okay, then we added this article dealing with solar energy systems. Just adding some further specifications on solar panels. Establishes a height, establishes limitations on their visual impacts because of their reflectivity. But yeah, and again, we borrowed this from another community that has a standard. I forgot which one specifically.
There's a county.
And then Article 8 is development agreements, commonly required, included in land development code. So this just specifies the process for development agreements that are approved under Florida statutes. And you may see, if you get a large development, you may see somebody trying to, who will need to do a development agreement at some point. But be glad to answer any of your questions. I think that's.
It's just
Oh,
defines
yeah.
the process as determined by the state statute.
It is consistent with state law, but it specifies the process that it goes through to get approved locally. And then we did redo these you're not seeing them, but there are some exhibits that show the setbacks and probably would have helped explain the pool or the hedge situation a little better, but we do have those that we have redone those. But we'll wait till you come up with the final numbers to include those.
These are the maps.
The little illustrations, yeah.
Pictures.
So we added, if you went with the 6 feet in height, that's changed on the drawing. And I'll provide those in the next draft, so they'll also be drafted. But that's pretty much it with the land development code recommendations.
Council, any other comments?
Just on the back pages, these fees.
Right.
Are they in conformance to what we're charging or
So the
are we
first
cheaper or more?
page 193 is what our current fees are right off the website. And then I asked, Gemini Engineering, which does our more complex site plan review, what they would charge for all of them. And that's the numbers that they gave me. I don't know how we feel about it, but I thought it'd be better to get more in line with what our site plan review would charge if we sent everything. A lot of the stuff we do in-house. But I don't know.
So on 194, if we outsource to those guys, that's what they would charge.
That's what they would charge, yes. And they're relatively cheaper than most.
Wow.
But then the Tower Renting Shores, just for example, it was one of their fee schedules.
We're a lot cheaper than everybody.
We've not raised our fees in a while.
So the idea is to do resolutions to set all these fees, wherever we end up. Just to be up to date.
$300.
Pools are a little bit more elaborate.
So right now, when we do it in-house, that's what you do? You
Yeah, a lot of this, like fences and
Right.
HVACs, generators, sheds. But I mean, we probably should bump, if not what the full cost Gemini would charge, probably something more realistic.
They're not astronomical increases, and if it frees up more of your time to have, I actually would prefer a third party doing this.
Okay.
Is there any time difference, like we doing it, is it quicker this way or is it? About the same?
Just, it's more time I can do something else.
I'm just saying.
Currently, the Gemini turns them around within days, usually with any of these.
Okay.
Yeah, and it puts less stress on you for meeting the deadlines of having to cough up a permit or deny it.
Good idea.
Okay, if everybody, are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Cerna
Yes, sir.
about the city manager or the city attorney? No? Right, well, last topic is unfinished, or I believe it's unfinished business.
General
Or
business.
general business. Do we have any new general business, or is everyone ready to go home?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to advise the council of an interpretation, a legal issue that I think warrants some attention. It won't require any specific action on your part at this time. In the March elections we went through, we did a series of charter amendments and revisions, and one of them had to deal with the voting requirement. And specifically, that voting on ordinance and resolutions shall be by roll call. And that no action of the council will be valid unless adopted by an affirmative vote of a majority of the council. Earlier tonight, I said that I'm always open to reviewing my own opinions and thoughts based on new information. In this instance, I don't have new information, but I spent a lot of time reflecting on this. And I've, to this point, opined to you that a majority of the council is 3 out of the 4 of you. But your council until November 2026 is a body of 7, presently operating as a body of 4. I think the better reading, and the reading that would protect this council and the city better, were there to be some legal challenge 2 or 3 years from now, would be to continue to interpret your council as a council of 7 until November. And thus, where we require a quorum of a majority of the council and a vote of a majority of the council, that both of those should be 4 in both instances. I know that I have specifically opined otherwise and said it is capable of 2 interpretations. The more I reflected on this after the fact, I feel that the more prudent, more conservative approach would be to say that any affirmative act of this council requires all 4 of you, and any meeting requires all 4 of you here. I've already brought this to the attention of the clerk and the manager before I brought this to your attention tonight. We have only 2 meetings, the April meeting and July meeting, where one person was not present, appeared remotely. We can ratify the decisions there. There have been no votes since this took effect in April, May, depending on how you look at how all this was done, where a resolution or ordinance was approved otherwise. To the extent you've given any direction, it has been informal by 3-1. I've talked with the manager, and those are things that are coming back before you anyway. So it was, preliminary direction on this project and that, but he's bringing a change order that actually documents it. And so those things will come before you. If there is anything that needs ratification, I'll present it to you. But I think my job for you is to manage risk. The mayor was just at the Florida League of Cities annual conference. I did a presentation there where I spoke for 4 hours and presented on ethics and sunshine law and records. And one of the things I said is my job is to tell you, here be dragons. And in most things, I let each of you go and determine how you want to face dragons, if you want to slay them or run from them. But my job is to tell you, here be dragons. And I think I'm doing the better thing for you as a council to say your decisions are insulated from potential challenge 1, 2, 3 years from now, if we don't even have that issue on the table. And so rather address it now. I never love saying, I don't think this was the best decision at the outset. I don't think it was the wrong decision, but I don't think it was the best one. I think this is a better course of action. And so I want to inform you tonight formally that my advice is going forward, if we are to have a meeting, all 4 of you, so long as you are 4, all 4 of you should be present. And going forward, to the extent we are having a vote on a resolution or ordinance, that should be a vote of all 4 of you to take an affirmative action of this body. We will review and see if there's anything that needs to be presented for ratification. We've already done a preliminary review. I do not see any major issues. But again, I owe it to you to tell you this, and I did not want to be in a situation where I'm sitting at the dais thinking this, but not saying it, and then creating issues later. So that is all I have on that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know each of you spent a considerable amount of time asking me questions about precisely this issue. And so if you're frustrated or upset by this, elucidating my decision, I fully accept and understand that. But I think that this is the more conservative and prudent approach for the city.
Council?
So just to clarify, you said, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Just to clarify, you said for any resolution or ordinance. So that means any business at all.
Functionally, yes. And because the language is no action of the council shall be valid unless adopted by an affirmative vote of the majority of the council. And the council until November 2026 is a council of 7. In how the council is defined. And I know each of you have asked me that, and I've sent emails on that and said it was capable of both, but I think this is the reading. The more I reflect on it, and I want to be very clear, this is not the product of any one thing happening. This was not because somebody said something to me. This is not because we received some kind of, email or letter. This is me doing my job and saying, you know what, I still think there's a better way. And it was one of those things that sat there in the back of my mind as I drove around and reflected on it. And I did discuss it with some of my colleagues and thought, you know what, yeah, that is the better rating. And that's why we're here.
I don't know.
Not why we're here, but why I'm bringing this to your attention.
Appreciate it very much. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And it's not a concern of mine in the sense that we were dealing with extraordinary circumstances. We were trying to make things work. You told us that there was doubt. You felt that it was supportable. In the event that there is an issue, we can still try to support it, but you're also saying that it's more conservative, to be a little more cautious, and going forward, we can do that. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Mr. Roberts?
So one option would be, if we chose to, we could bring on 3 additional council members.
That continues to be an option at all times, that to read, and with an understanding of how those terms would phase based on the charter language adopted.
If we brought on one
require all 4 members approving all 3.
right,
Or at least one, and then once you have one appointed,
then we could,
then subsequently, depending on how you time and do things. But
if we
yes.
did bring on 1 additional, we would then have 5, obviously. So then the quorum would be still 4.
The quorum would be, the quorum would be still 4 present, but a majority vote would be 4 out of those 5.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to clarify. Okay.
Mr. Moore, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and totally understandable how You may question your own opinion and think about it. I know that, the Form 6, the election, everything, has been a difficult, undertaking, to manage, not only for you, but for the rest of us. We know what we're supposed to do going forward, and, we'll see how it goes.
Thank you for your added time on the end of a lengthy meeting. I appreciate it.
Speaking of Form 6, is there any new information regarding that?
Beyond the judicial injunction, with the Form 1 being sufficient, had you not filed a Form 6 yet. The reality is, I don't see that changing until the next legislative session, when the legislature may try to come at it another way.
Well,
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed that they will, and they just didn't provide enough reasons. They'll find reasons.
So right now it's Form 1.
Yes, sir.
Form 1.
Unless you had already filed your Form 6.
Yeah.
Maybe they could
Most
give
of
it
my
to the
life I
people
did
handling the
procrastinate.
piece. And then we'll all be dead before the.
All right, if we have no other general business, motion to adjourn,
Second.
all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
let's go home.
Was this?